Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from group 9 and we are going to presentation about our topic. The topic is about grading and student evaluation. The first presentation will be presented by me, Alamsyah Anas. Objective after reading this chapter, you will be able to state a philosophy of grading tailored to your institution and context. Communicate to students grading criteria that are both clear and an appropriate fit for your institutional context. 3. Calculate grades based on the reliable system of scoring and that is consistent with your institutional context and personal philosophy. Develop scoring rubrics to assess student performance and provide feedback. 4. Is resolve potential dilemmas that might otherwise cause a mismatch between a teacher and a student understanding of the meaning of a grade. Is it not ironic that untold hour of reading, listening to lecturers, note-taking, writing paper, doing assignment, and going to class are invariably reduced to one of 5 letters of the alphabet? And after all the grueling labor, the only thing that seems to really matter is that the letter goes onto a transcript. And perhaps even more ironic is that the standard for assigning a grade are extraordinarily variable across teacher, subject matter, course, program, institution, school system, and even cultures. Every institution from high school on up has its easy teacher and talk teacher whose grading standard different, and sometimes mathematics and science course gain the reputation of for being strict in assigning grades because one incorrect part of a complicated problem means a failing grade. Certain institutions are known by transcript evaluators to be stingy with high grades, and therefore a B in those places is equivalent to an A in other. American grading systems are demonstrably different from some systems in Europe and Asia. A course grade of 85% may be considered noteworthy in some countries, whereas in the United States the same percentage score is a B or possibly a mean B. Book and manual on language assessment generally omit the topic of grading and student evaluation, and possibly for good reason. Focusing on the evaluation of a plethora of different spirit assessment produced may be sufficient for a course in language testing and assessment. Without the complex of tackling a summary of all those assessments. On the other hand, most new teachers have questions about grading, and experienced teachers have opinions, and therefore a book about language assessment will not be complete without discussing a few principles and practice of grading. This chapter addresses topics such as what should grades reflect, how should different objectives, tasks, and components of a course figure into a formula for calculating grades, how do cultural and institutional philosophies dictate standards for grading, how can a teacher achieve reliability in grading students, what is a grading rubric. From this discussion, you can derive some generalization about the nature of grading, some principles of grading, and some specific guidelines to follow in assigning grades. The philosophy of grading. What should grades reflect? Let's consider the following scenario. You are teaching a course in English in a context of your choice. Select a country, institutional situation, course content, and proficiency level. You are given the following questionnaire and fill it out now before reading on. Criteria for determining a final grade in a course. One is language performance of the student as formally demonstrated on tests quiz, and other explicitly score produced. B. Your intuitive, informal observation of the student's language performance. C. Oral participation in class. D. Improvement over the entire course period. E. Behavior in class, being cooperative, polite, disruptive, etc. F. Effort. G. Motivation. H. Punctuality and attendance. Item B and C also draw significant support, but a word of caution is in order here. If intuitive, informal observation by the teacher figure into a final grade, it is very important to inform the student in advance how those observation and impression will be recorded throughout the semester. Likewise, if oral participation is listed as one of the objectives of a course and as a factor in a final grade, the challenge to all teachers is to quality that participation as clearly and directly as possible, leaving either of these factors to a potentially whimsical of impressionistic evaluation, and the end of the course risks unnecessary unreliability. Failure to decide both informal assessment and observation will be summed up risk confusing a student's cooperative behavior with actual performance. On item G through H, there are some disagreement and considerable discussion after the exercise, but all those items receive at least a few votes for inclusion. How can those factors be systematically incorporated into a final grade? Some educational assessment experts state definitely valid that none of these items should ever be a factor in grading. Guidelines for selecting grading criteria. Consistency. It is essential for all components of grading to be consistent with an institutional philosophy and or regulation. Some institutions, for example, mandate deduction for unexcused absence. Others require that only the final exam determine a course grade. Still, other institutions may implicitly dictate a relative high number of A's and B's for each class of students. Embedded in institutional philosophies are the implicit expectation that students place on a school or program, and your attention to those impressions is warranted. Transparency. All of the components of a final grade need to be explicitly stated in writing to students at the beginning of a term of study, with a designation of percentage or weighting figure for each component. Specificity. If your grading system includes term D through G in the questionnaire in the previous section, improvement behavior section, effort and motivation, it is important for you to recognize their subjectivity, but this does not give you an excuse to avoid converting such factor into observable and measurable results. Challenge yourself to create checklists, chart, and note-taking system that allow you to convey to the student the basis for your conclusion. It is further advisable to guard against final weak impressionality. Summative decision by giving ongoing periodic feedback to students on such matter through written comments or conference. By nipping potential problem in the bud, you might help students to change their attitudes and strategies early in the term. Weighting. Finally, consider allocating relatively small weight to item C through H to that a grade primarily reflect achievement. A designation of 5% to 10% of a grade to such factor will not mark strong achievement in a course. And by allocating a small percentage of a grade to behavior, motivation, or effort, and by measuring those factors as ambitiously as possible, you can justifiably give the student a final grade of mean A. Likewise, a reversal of this scenario may lead to a somewhat lower final grade. And next slide will be presented by Aunia Mutahara.
Relative grading is usually accomplished by ranking students in order of performance and assigning cutoff points for grades. An older, relatively uncommon method of relative grading is what has been called grading on the curve, a term that comes from the normal bell curve of normative data. Normative data plot on a graph. In institution X, the expectation is a curve that skews slightly to the right compared with a normal bell curve. The third institution may represent the expectation of a university postgraduate program where a C is considered a failing grade. A B is acceptable but indicates adequate work only, and an A is the expected target from most students. Teachers' perception of appropriate grade distributions. Most teachers bring to a test or a course evaluation an interpretation of estimate appropriate distributions. Follow that interpretation and make minor adjustments to compensate for such matters as unexpected difficulty. This prevailing attitude toward a relative grading system is well accepted and uncontroversial. What is surprising, however, is that teachers pre-confident notions of their own standard for grading often do not match their actually practice. When the response were tabled, the distribution for the two groups was as indicated in figure 11.1. Okay, you can see the picture. Tell about absolute grading scale. There are include midterm, final exam, other performance, and last total point. Okay, next. Institutional expectations and constraints. The insight gained by the early teachers described previously, for example, were supported to some extent by an examination of institutional expectation typical of many graduate programs in American universities. This program manifests a distribution of grades in which are awarded to an estimate 60% to 70% of students, with BS going to almost all of the remainder. In the early context, it had become commonplace for the graduate grading expectation to wrap off onto early courses in ESL. Point systems are more common globally than the letter grades used almost universally in the United States.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Perkenalkan, nama saya Anissa Miranti Fijrina. Saya akan melanjutkan presentasi dari Aunia. Cultural norms and question about adversity. Any learner of English comes from an indigenous culture that may have an implicit philosophy of grading on broad difference with those of an English-speaking culture. Trial and pre-testing. The answer is complex. It is usually a combination of several possible factors. experience as a teacher or with appropriate intuition, proficiency in designing visible text, take care to frame clear and relevant items, reflect assignment in the classroom that students have mastered, various tests on the test itself, reference to previous tests in the same course, through review and preparation for the exam. Know your student collective abilities. Every teacher knows the experience of evaluating a group of tests that turn out to be too easy, or everyone achieve a high score, or too difficult. When you change the test, it's better to assess the performance of your student. What does letter value mean? The institutional philosophy of judgment, whether explicitly or implicitly stated, relies on the expectation of class distribution and for the meaning or description of each class. Institutional manual for teacher and student usually list the following descriptors of outstanding letter grades: B, good; C, adequate; D, inadequate; F, valid. Letter grades ostensibly connote holistic scores that summarize many tests may consist of several methods and properties. Rating or moral production, each score category determines as many as 6 different qualities or competencies that are met. The exact grade generalization implicit in the judgment of the letters underscore the meaning lack of adjective are usually seen as descriptors of the letters. Any teachers who uses a letter grade or percentage score to provide an assessment evaluation establishes a default based on explicitly stated criteria. The word that letter or number evaluation is only one side of the representation of the complexity of a student ability statement. Alternatives to letter assessment are very important to consider. Test and assignment scores and assessment. A common complaint said by teachers is that it centers on text, assessing text, and assessment theft. Measurement is the process of quantifying a student performance that is observed. As a teacher, give assignments such as number, symbols, letters, or give oral or written description when assessing. Scoring methods. Depending on the type of response the test gets from a student, the assessment is the approach taken by the teacher will vary. When test item and assignment require learning choosing a response or generating a limit response, the response can be assessed using the K of assessment. In both of the example above, the response is judged as correct or wrong. This is called a dichotomous assessment. The correct response receives a 1 and the wrong response receives 0. In addition to true or false judgment, a response can also have multiple levels truth ranging from 0 to 1 to 2. This approach is called polytomous score, better known as partial credit scoring, and it is relative even when a limit response needs to explain some areas of the language ability. The assessment becomes more complex in cases where the response to the test, item, or assignment are more extensive and interactive and require learners to produce language beyond a single word or sentence. Print open response. For open performance-based learner response, the K2 assessment is used a grading scale, or more commonly known as a rubric, until to assess this type of test assignment. Like the K2 assessment, the rubric is a guide that helps teachers assess student performance based on variety of criteria. Rubric or scale lists the criteria or characteristic of a student response must show at different levels or ribbons for those criteria, with a marked increase in the use of class-based assessment. Rubric has taken the front seat in the teacher's evaluative apparatus. Reddy and Andrade review on the use of rubric in higher education found that rubrics not only benefit the teacher, but also the student can get better, focus their effort, produce higher quality work, get better grades, and feel less anxious about the test. Instead, it forms a major part of his learning life, being a part the lesson he hopes to learn. Steps involved in developing rubric or adapting one to the test context are discussed in the section Developing Rubrics. For a teacher or at the program level, the approach taken in developing a rubric is divided into two types. One, intuitive, and two, empirical. In an intuitive approach, language teachers with experience or expert in their field give a description of the abilities and decide the level of performance. The empirical approach, or what Fulcher calls a data-driven approach, involves examining the size language generated by the learner taking the test and then applying data to write descriptor and identify the level of performance. Rubrics are arranged like a matrix. The criteria of a construct or ability are listed on one side, and different levels of that criterion are listed along the other. The components of the capability are the criteria that each response must contain. For the exam, you can specify the content, organization, and grammar as criteria in the rubric, and based on the description, assess the construction of the rating and whether the learner's performance is above, meets, or below the desired level of ability. At this stage, it is also important to decide whether you will use your rubric to assess the response holistically or analytically, since the criteria must be combined for the first and a separate one for the latter for each level in the rubric. Hi, my name is Anissa Jaruni Hasibuan. The decision to use a holistic or analytic scoring approach depends, of course, on the purpose of the test, how the result will be used, and so on. First, holistic rubrics are useful when, for administrative purpose, it is impractical to break down student performance into separate categories, each with its own separate score. Instead, a holistic or overall evaluation suffices to accomplish the purpose of an assessment. Placement tests, for example, must be scored quickly enough to assign students to ability-based classes, sometimes as early as the next day. Analytical rubrics, on the other hand, offer more information to the teacher and student in terms of several subcategories of performance. A writing test broken down into the separate criteria of content, organization, vocabulary, grammar, and mechanics offer more diagnostic information, which is turn might serve to individualize a student's objective. Next is about determining levels. The next part of the process is to decide on the levels or bands in which to place a learner's response. How many levels to include in a rubric also depends on the purpose of the rubric and what the score conveys. Just two rating levels can be used to show the presence or absence of criterion or whether a standard was met. For our 5 rating levels can be used to provide more details, for example, beginning, developing, competent, and accomplished. Rating descriptor for each level. Rating descriptor for each level is the final part of the process. Successful descriptor should describe observable and measurable behavior. For example, a rating test might have in its guide the following description. The essay effectively addressed the rating task. Basically, a test system is supervised, detailed, is well organized, and demonstrates a variety of syntax and appropriate word choice. Descriptor should be kept as brief as possible and should include sufficient details to describe what a learner can do and not what they cannot do. Descriptor should also contain parallel language at each level. Only the degree to which the criterion is met should vary. For example, a speaking test may have the following descriptor at different levels, like communication always effective, communication generally effective, communication somewhat effective, communication generally not effective, and communication not effective. Okay, the next part is about guidelines for rubric development. An online search using the term developing rubric or creating rubric returns a host of a website that can assist you to further understand the usefulness of rubric and how to design them. For example, the Rubrystar website is easy to see the benefit of rubric in an assessment mode that elicits oral and written response that may be both lengthy, as in portfolios and journal, and complex. In such circumstance, future response to learn can be subjective with a casual comment here and a nice job there without pinpointing student strengths and weaknesses. Rubrics provide on an easily comprehend charge points for students to focus and goals to pursue. The last part is about guidelines for grading and evaluation. We have become a little better informed about the widely accepted practice of grading students, whether on a separate test or on summative evaluation of performance in a course. You should now understand that grading is not necessarily based on a universally accepted scale. Grading is sometimes subjective and dependent on content. Tests are often graded on a curve. Grades reflect a teacher philosophy of grading. Grades reflect an institutional philosophy of grading. And next, cross-cultural variation in grading philosophy needs to be understood. The next is grades often come from by design to lecture expected distribution of students across a continuum. Tests do not always yield an expected level of difficulty. And the last part is tests can be scored using rubric or answer keys. Letter grade may not mean the same thing to all people.